Welcome to my channel everyone. Today I will be showing you guys how to make this fur coat. But before we start, please note that I did not use any sewing machine for this. It's all hand sewn. So the good news is that you don't need a machine to make this fur coat, and hand sewing is really easy, beginner friendly. So let's get started. To make this fur coat, I have 1 yard of fabric because I'm making a cropped one. But if you want to make it a full fur coat, make sure you have about 1.5 to 2 yards of fabric. I'm also going to use a denim jacket to trace the size because this one is not too oversized for me, neither it's too tight, as I want the same fitting with my fur coat, so it's the perfect one to use for tracing. I'm starting from one side of the fabric to make sure I don't waste much. I'm placing one sleeve over the fabric, which is folded enough so I can get one sleeve out of it. Next, tracing the sleeves all around with the help of a chalk. And before I go ahead and cut out, I'm making sure all the lines are straight and nice, and then finally cutting it out. Moving on to the other side of the fabric, I'm doing the same. Now, because I don't want to hem the sleeve edges, so I'm trying to keep the sleeve edges on the side where it's already hemmed, like there's the finished line on the side of every fabric, so do keep that in mind. These are small hacks to minimize your work, but if you want to hem, definitely go ahead and do it. Now I have my 2 sleeves ready. Let's move on to trace the body. With the leftover fabric, I'm folding it into half. Make sure there's no fold ups, it's nice and plain. And once I'm done, I'm going to trace the back of the jacket as it has no slits. So I'm placing it with the back up front. And before tracing the size, make sure it's wrinkle free, nice and plain. Next, all I'm doing is tracing the shape and size with the help of a chalk. Also, I'm not adding a collar to this coat, so I'm keeping it straight as it is near the collar area and tracing it all around, starting from one shoulder to the next. Before cutting the pieces out, I'm making sure to cut it in half first so it's easier, as the fabric is fluffy and thick, so even a slightest bit matters. Once I'm done cutting it in half, I'm going to follow the trace line, but don't forget to keep some seam allowance, so I'm keeping about 1 centimeter and cutting it out. And to make sure both the sides are exactly the same, I'm folding it in half and cutting the other side. Now I'm keeping the first bit of fabric aside for now, as it's going to be the back of the coat. And with the next one, I'm going to cut it out in half, as it's going to be the front of the coat. So now I have 2 bits of fabric for the front of the coat, 1 for the back, and 2 bits of fabric for the sleeves. Moving on, I'm going to use some satin for the body of the coat. So I'm taking the back bit of the coat and placing it over the satin, adding some pins so when I start cutting the fabric, it won't slip around. And the next step is easy. I'm just following the exact shape of the fur bit and cutting out the satin. Now I'm going to hand sew these 2 pieces all around and leave about 2 inch open so I can flip the inside out. So starting from one side, I'm basically doing a straight stitch all around, keeping about 1 centimeter near the edge. Just take your time. Know that hand sewing is a bit time consuming. Make sure your lines are straight and clean, because if it's not, it's going to show up when you flip it inside out. So be patient, listen to some music or watch a movie, and know that it's going to take some time, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be worth it. Once I'm done with the straight stitch, I'm doing a zigzag stitch just to make sure it's more secure near the edges and it won't come out any corner or any side when I flip the other way around. Once I'm done with both the stitches, I'm flipping it inside out. Now as you can see, all the edges are nice and clean, not out of shape, so I will go ahead and sew the left bit doing a straight stitch. So for the front two bits of fabric, I'm following the same technique. So place the setting right side up and your piece of fur fabric wrong side up. Pin it down to make sure the fabric won't slip and cut it out. Also do the same with the other piece. Once I have the front pieces ready, I'm cutting out a triangle from the neckline. So just for an idea, it's 4.5 inches on both the sides. Of course, the measurements depends on how deep you want your neckline to be. I'm just showing you guys for an idea, but I don't want to be really precise, so I'm just cutting a triangle out from both the sides. Next, of course, you know what to do. I'm doing a straight stitch around the edges first and then a zigzag stitch. Flipping it inside out and sewing the rest. Now we have our body pieces ready for the fur coat. So I'm placing the back bit right side up and the front bits wrong side up, adding pins near the shoulder and also near the armhole, and sewing the pieces together. Now I'm only going to use the zigzag stitch method as the edges of both the setting and the fur fabric is already secured, so only zigzag stitch should do. But if you want to make sure it's more secure, definitely go ahead and do both the straight and zigzag stitch. So once I'm done sewing all the pinned areas, it's time to move to the sleeves. Now for the sleeves, all I'm doing is a zigzag stitch and starting 1 inch away from the edges, as I don't want any threads hanging near the wrist. Also, I'm not using any setting for the sleeves because I feel it's the body of the coat that can be uncomfortable to wear without any extra fabric, as the back side of the fur fabric is a bit rough and flaky. And also when you wear the coat, sometimes the inside of the coat is visible, so it's necessary to add a silky material inside. But for the sleeves, if you want to add some extra fabric, definitely go ahead and do it, but I'm okay like this, so I will move on. Once the sleeves are ready, I'm flipping it inside out and going to add it to the body. So I'm turning the coat wrong side out and placing one of the sleeves near the armhole. Pinning it down so I can sew it with no doubts. And once I'm done pinning it all around, I'm doing a zigzag stitch. So first tie some knots with the threads on both the sides to make sure it's nicely secure. Then go back and forth, do a zigzag stitch. Make sure you pull the threads every single time you stitch, just to make sure it's tight and clean. Once you're done sewing it all around the armhole, turn it right side out. see if everything's okay, and do the same with the other sleeve, and your fur coat should be ready. Normally, nice quality fur coats are so hard to find in the market, and even if you do, it's always super expensive. So I hope this way you can save a bit and also learn how to hand sew a fur coat. So please don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up if you want to see more DIY videos like this, and I will see you guys next time. Bye guys.